Day number 2. Day 2.
Day 2.
Day 2.
Dia dos.
Day 2.
Jordi.
It's day 2. I don't know what day it is. We're getting off to kind of a late start today, but on the bright side, I did get some new tags. We are now 100% legal. Okay, that's probably a stretch. Maybe it's more like 98%. Maybe like 95. Go 95%-ish legal. So today we're going to dive in under the hood here and try to get as much of this wrapped up as possible. The first thing I want to do is take a look at the gas tank. This thing always had a really nice tank on. Never had any issues with rust or sediment or anything in it. So hopefully it's still that way. It has been empty for a couple of years. I'm going to pop the cap off, take a look inside there, and hopefully there's nothing in there. It's still super clean in there. I'll bring you on over. You can have a look for yourself. First thing I'm going to do is get these old plugs out of here. Actually, that's a new plug already, but that's still an old one. And these are little eyelets here for pulling the head or pulling the engine if you haven't seen those before. So we'll get all those out, get that tightened up. These are already gapped because I was going to put them in something else and they didn't make it that far. So they're all ready to go on this. So next up we're going to throw the distributor in, and before you do that you need to set the engine at top dead center. So in order to do that, you take this timing pin down in here. It's a 9/16. Alright. Take this timing pin, flip it around, put it back in the hole that way. Like that. And now, you hold on to that and push in on it a little bit. While you turn the engine over, when you get to top dead center, that pin will drop into a little divot in the cam gear, and that'll tell you it's a top dead center. Right there. Now before we go throwing the distributor, I'm going to throw a little splash of oil down the distributor hole. That goes right into the valve cavity. That'll give a little lubrication down in that general vicinity there. Chug, 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 chug. That's plenty. Alright, we got our distributor ready to go. Don't forget to back the set screw off of there. It won't let you put it in. Alright. Also, this pin, make sure that goes in that hole. This thing does not twist, it goes in there one way. And I'm not entirely sure. I think number 1's over here, so we'll put it somewhat close. You can only put this in one way. You can't really screw it up. It's got a slot and it's offset, so it's only going to take it one way. It's also a good idea to put a little bit of oil in the body. That way it doesn't get seized in the head, which happens quite often. So, with any luck, this will actually go in here. Come on. Come on. Come on. No, 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 no. Oh, oh, maybe we got it. And we're in. That is really close to that spark plug. Huh. I don't think that's going to work out very well there. So here's our issue. This is the spark rod. This runs from your spark control on the steering column. to the spark rod on the distributor to adjust and retard, to advance and retard your timing. Now, obviously, the problem is it's literally sitting on top of the spark plug. The original Model A had them over in here, so they were kind of side by side here and side by side over here. You didn't have that issue. Well, obviously now we do. I'm assuming most people that run these cylinder heads probably don't run stock distributors, so it's probably not a common problem. Which means I probably should have done the same thing, but I don't have time in the next 2 days to order a new distributor, so we're going to figure out how to make this work. So what I'm going to do, I already bought a modern cap that I wanted to run because I knew the original cap wouldn't work well with this setup. So that much I figured out already. So my plan of attack on this is I'm going to, this has the notch here. This is where your spark thingamajiggy goes back and forth. I already checked it real quick. In the retarded position, it's fine. In the advanced position, it runs into this. So I'm going to open this hole up a little bit. What this is going to do is give me a reference as to where the range is on that, because I know this was correct at one point. So I know the steering column's good. So once I get that figured out, I'm going to build a little extension for this and bring it out into here somewhere. And I believe it'll be full advance before it gets to the spark plug. So it'll travel in here without hitting that. And I think that might work. I don't really know. But that's the only thing I can think of at the moment, because obviously this is not going to fly. So I'm going to check with this, start filing away at that until we get our full range on that. And I don't know, we'll figure something out probably. Alright, new plan. For the time being, the auto light plugs are actually quite a bit shorter. I can kind of get my finger in between here. If I go back to the original style cap and the old wires, they'll go on from the side. Like I said, I had the modern cap with the wires that go straight down, which is what I wanted to run, but that is not going to work here. But I'm pretty sure if we run that, it'll go on there. There you go. And I hook the wire in like that and come down around underneath that rod. There'll be plenty of clearance, and that'll work. At least for now. Maybe eventually I'll figure something else out, but I think this is the quickest way to get it done and actually have it done in 3 days. So that is the new plan. Let's see if it works. Well, I just so happen to have a new set of auto lights sitting here. I actually had to steal them out of the pickup over there. Sorry, Jason. We're still waiting on a back-ordered fan, so it wasn't hitting the road anyway, so we'll get a new set for that. I got pretty good room there. I can fit my finger between there. I think that'll work, at least temporarily anyway. So the next thing I want to do on this is get the timing set on it. I'm pretty sure it's either really close or right on, because I did set it not long before I stopped driving it. So it should be right in the ballpark, but I want to double check it. So I'm going to go grab my timing wrench, get the battery hooked up. So now that I'm somewhat certain that there's a slight possibility that this might actually work, I'm going to tighten down the old distributor screw here so I don't forget it. It ain't got to be super tight, just get it snug and then hold it while you tighten the jam nut down here. So I was going to do the timing procedure in the book, but I actually have one of these Nurex wrenches there that even has all the instructions on it. I know I'm actually going to read the instructions. So that makes it really simple for timing it, so I'm just going to do that instead. We've got to throw the cap on to do that. So what you do with this, get your cap on, loosen that center screw that holds the cam down. So you make sure you're right in the center of the top dead center spot. Spin this around twice in a clockwise direction. Good. And then when it runs into the fourth post here, your post for number 4, right there is where you want to tighten it down. And supposedly that's right on the money now. Also, before you put this all together, put a little drop of oil on the top of the screw there. It's got a little pea hole in it there that'll lubricate the top, and then put some oil on this Whoosma dinger here for your little Whoosma woozy at the bottom there. Well, the distributor's all back together. And now I found out that the plug wires are not long enough. Yeah, I guess I'll dig around, see if I can find some old ones that are longer. Otherwise, I don't know, we'll rig something up, I guess. So I've got a new plan. The new plan is to abandon the new plan and go back to the old plan. Does that sound like a plan? Since the plug wires are going to be too short to use the original style stuff, I'm going to go back to the original idea. And I've got an old junk distributor. I'm thinking if take this plate out and cut at least the arm off, but cut back into this, that would give us a nice long piece to make an extension onto the other plate, get the rod away from the spark plug, and I think that might actually work. But let's see if we can get this thing apart and find out. Cut right there and there, maybe. Give us a nice long piece to work with, possibly. So here's where we're at. Try and keep up, will you? Come on. Cut this piece out of the other plate and mount it somewhere like this. Trying to keep the rod away from this head stud because it's hitting that. So I bent it up a little bit. I think if we mount it underneath like that, mount this on there, let me put it on the stud here. So that needs to be there. This needs to be here. Still hitting that. So I need to bend that up a little bit more. I think that'll do it, hopefully. I don't know if I dare say this, but I think this might actually work. So I've got that piece mounted up on here, put a pretty good bend in it. And with that, that's the fully advanced position. Set this on here. That's full advance. I think right there will work. Clears the head stud. Barely, but it clears the head stud. I'll throw one of the plug wires on it. Looks like we should have quite a bit of room there. It won't have the throw to go in a full retard position, but that doesn't really matter. A few degrees isn't going to matter since it's only for starting anyways. So I'm not going to weld this tonight, but I'm going to get this thing all ready to weld it in the morning. So I'm going to pull all the guts out of this so we don't damage anything when welding it. There we go. Alright. So I've got just the upper plate in there now. I think we can line this up, do a couple tack welds on that without hurting anything. Then I'll pull that plate right out of there, do an actual weld on it. Hopefully that will work. That's going to be in the morning. So what we can do tonight is pick away at the fuel system. Try to get the carburetor on here, maybe get some fuel lines run. At least get that knocked out. Clean up the underside of the intake here real quick. So what I got here is a rebuilt Marvel Shebler. These were sold under a few different names, like Allstate. I think Sears sold them as Allstate. Montgomery Ward sold them as, I don't know, something else. But it's supposed to be a good carburetor. We will find out. I'm gonna leave it a little bit loose. Maybe easier to finagle it that way, trying to get the fuel line run to it. So it looks like the plan is we're going to run a short section from off the valve here to the sediment bowl. I'm not sure. Actually, these originally were on the carburetor, I think, in the late 31s. So I think if we do that, I'll probably kind of put it off to the side here. This elbow is very much stuck in here, so that's not coming out. If I rotate a little bit, it kind of gets away from the exhaust a little more, which I'm definitely a big fan of that. And the inlet of this carburetor is really far away from the engine compared to where the stock one would be because of this fitting and just because of the design of the marbles. So I think if we went straight like this, the line would have to kind of come way out to go back in. So if we kick it off sideways, it should be able to come down in. So I think that's the plan. We're going to bend up a little piece of 90 here, get this started anyway, and then we'll worry about that afterwards. Using Nycop line here. This is that nickel copper stuff, and it bends really nice. Got our piece cut. Got our little fittings already here. What I like to do with these are these little, I don't know, ferrule compression fitting things, whatever you want to call them. They just slip on over the line, but they need to be kind of close to the end there. You don't want them, I obviously don't want them hanging over the end, but you don't want them way back either. So get them pretty close to the end. I like to mark the line, that way you can tell when you screw it in there where that thing actually is, because otherwise it's pretty hard to get it in the right spot. So if you get it where you want it, get a pen or a marker or something, put a line on there, that way you know when you're putting it in that that's where the end of your nut wants to be. Kicking off day number 3, and as you saw from yesterday, day number 2 was definitely a number 2 day. But at least now we have a game plan. I think this new solution for the distributor problem is going to work. So we're going to put the fuel lines aside for just a minute, get back on that. I want to weld that up, just make sure that's actually going to work. Then we'll jump back on the fuel system and hopefully have this thing wrapped up today. As you can see, I have my wonderful tinfoil welding blanket all deployed here, so that should work just fine. So I want to get this thing set to the full advanced position, try to clamp it in place, get my rod set to the full advanced position and figure out where those need to be, put a couple tacks on there. Then I'm going to pull it all apart, go weld the plate over on the bench and do some cleanup and try to make it look as pretty as possible. So I want to lock this plate into position so when I get it to full advance it doesn't move around. So what I did was put the cam back on, put the spring on there, put a washer between them so that it's got a bunch of tension on it now. You can move it, but it's pretty hard to. So once I get it where I want it from here, it should stay right there. I'll log down and get the ends cleaned up here. I think we're pretty well set to tack that. Carefully move the lever back and forth just to make sure that there's no interference before we go and weld that thing up. Seems pretty rugged. I think it'll be alright. I did lose a little bit of range. It doesn't go to the full retarded position, but like I said before, we really don't need that. That's just for starting. Let's pull this thing apart, finish welding it. So I built up that gap a little more with some weld just to try to make it flow a little better so it didn't look like it was two pieces. And I think it'll be alright. We'll dress that up a little bit with a flap wheel. I think it should look alright. I want to double check real quick. I just threw the plate back in here and threw this new cap on. And I did clearance the end of that a little bit so we get full advance on it. So this is in the fully retarded position and it's still got a little bit of a gap. So like I said, it's not going to go to 0 degrees, but it'll be plenty enough. And the only reason they even have that is so you can start it easier. There's all kinds of clearance between the head, a bunch of room between the spark plug. So that's now in the full advanced position. And there's still plenty of room there. I mean, it's getting a little close to that, but I'll just shape that side a little, make sure that's a little thinner there. Alright, so yeah, I can still get my finger between the plug and the arm, so it's not like it's going to arc. Yeah, that should be just fine. There's all kinds of room up in here. Yep, I think that'll work. The distributor plate's all finished up, and I gave it a quick shot of my favorite rattle can, VHT, chassis and roll bar paint. The stuff is awesome. And no, they're not paying me to say that, at least not yet. So while that's drying, we're going to jump back on the fuel line, hopefully finish that up. See this right here? Gold fender covers. It's how you know you've made it in the car world. This is the little piece we made up last night. I'm going to sling that up in here, get the fuel bowl hanging. Alright, I think that'll give us a shot down in here and over into there. If you're doing a line like this, it's got 2 or 3 bends in it, get a coat hanger or a piece of mechanics wire or something and just mock it up with that. It'll be a lot easier than trying to screw around with bending the line 14 times. Get a good idea with this and you can build your line off of this. So it's a good thing to start with right there. Leave your ends a little bit long. You can always just trim them. Obviously you can't make it longer if you cut it too short, so leave a little extra and just cut it down to, you can kind of fine tune the fit of it. Go double check the location of the other bend because that's fairly important. I think right there we can make work. Alrighty, where we at? Where we at? It's gotta go in there. It's gonna go somewhere up in there. We're pretty close as long as it. I'll have to cut some off of this, obviously. I'll trim this back a little bit, see what it looks like. I need to cut some more off of this. I'm gonna get it kind of back into here more, somewhere in there. I'll knock a little bit more off of that. It's going to sit probably in there somewhere. I'm going to cut that probably right there. Just realized that I ran out of the air style nut, so this is one of the old style ones, and hopefully it'll work. There's like a seal inside of this that seals to the line instead of having a compression fitting. Yeah, hopefully it works. Doesn't leak. If not, I'll have to get another correct nut for it. But usually get the right depth anyway. A little deeper than that, up into there probably. I want to take little cuts and just creep up on it. It's a whole lot easier to go back and cut a little more off than to try to put it back on. Gonna be probably a little bit too long. So I think that'll work. We'll tweak that a little bit. I think we're good. That actually has a stop, so you can't put that in too far anyway. How does that look? Get in here and take a better look. Gotta work alright. It's a little hokey being sideways like that, but it is what it is. Gotta work. I don't get any leaks in there, and actually I'm gonna bend that up a little bit. I think it's downhill, so I'll straighten that out a little bit. Well, there it is in all its glory. Again, this is not the ideal setup in here, but it is what it is. It'll work. Doesn't look horrible. Hopefully there's no leaks. I'm gonna get the old choke stuff there hooked up, and then I'm gonna get back on that old distributor, and hopefully I think our carburetor hookups are all good, hopefully. I'm going to pull the distributor body back out and assemble all of that on the bench. That way I don't start dropping stuff down in here to where I can never get at it again. Let's see if I can remember how to put this back together. So I got a front bearing retainer for transmission here. That seems to work pretty good to hold this. So here's the modified upper plate. Didn't get a good look at that earlier. It's certainly not the prettiest thing in the world, but it'll do the job. You know, kind of like your prom date. So we'll get that back in if I can remember how it goes in there. Alright, let's set the timing again. Find the hole there. There we go. Right there. Distributor's all back in, everything's hooked up. Got our rotor in there. Got our new cap. Let me go run the spark rod real quick and just make sure that it does go where I think it goes. That is full advance. And that is right up against the cap. So that's good. Fully retarded, and again it comes up a little short, but it'll be just fine. So I'm not touching anything there. I think we're good. I'm gonna throw a little splash of gas in this thing and see if we have any leaks. Oh, we got a massive leak. And now we wait. Well, I think we finally resolved all the fuel leaks. This thing is pretty much ready to try to fire it up. Unfortunately, this video is already getting pretty long, so we're going to have to put that off to the next one. So make sure you come back and check that out.